Welcome to Complexity Made Simple. My name is Paul Allen, and the subject of today's video newsletter, well, we're going to give some advice for PhD students. I was recently asked a question about how to apply design of experiments in a PhD project, and it's worth just giving out some additional advice. I work with some PhD students each year at Nottingham and Loughborough University, teaching them design of experiments. And this is a piece of advice that I give them, as well as the design of experiments class. So we're going to cover that. We're going to cover that in a moment. Just before we get into today's video, just a reminder about the books. Drink tea and read the paper. Design of Experiments for 21st Century Engineers. So this is going to go well with what we're going to cover in today's video. And Statistical Process Control for Small Batch Production. The links are in the comments below. If you don't want to support me by buying a book, please go and make a donation on buymeacoffee.com. All of those donations keep the channel moving. So thank you very much for those. So let's go over this material about advice for PhD students. And it's very simple. Despite the fact that you're doing a PhD, advice for PhD students. So this does it does relate to doing designed experiments. But to be honest, it just relates to getting your head around your PhD generally. This is obviously for the technical PhDs. People are into chemistry, physics, biology, the heavy duty kind of science-based PhDs. And here's the main piece of advice. Number one, of course, go learn design of experiments. You are the PhDs, you are learning to learn. And this tool, design of experiments, there is no better technique to learn in the fastest possible way. I know you've got 3 years, but this thing, wow, this turbocharges your knowledge. Now, in order to get this right, my advice is this. Job one is construct what I'm going to call an IPO diagram, a multi-level input, process, output diagram. Now, what would this look like? What does an IPO diagram look like? Well, it's very simple. It just looks like this. This is what I teach all my clients. Everybody that works with me in a class or on a project, we work with IPO diagrams. And basically what you've got is very simple. You've got a process, you've got inputs, and you've got outputs. Seems very straightforward. Now, obviously, when you're doing a PhD, you're going to have a process in front of you. You're going to have a piece of knowledge to get hold of. So you're going to have something like this. But of course, it's going to be much more complicated than this. And that's why I want you to draw these diagrams. These diagrams are simple, but so powerful when you're trying to understand what it is you're trying to do. Where's my lack of knowledge? What is it I'm going to do next? Because I don't want you to draw one that looks like this, as simple as this. I want you to construct one for the system that you're trying to understand. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to create something that I would call a multi-level IPO. All right, so let's see if I can invent one. So let's say that we are trying to grow brain cells in a laboratory. We're trying to grow brain cells from a substrate and some raw materials, let's say. I'm not a biologist, so I'm kind of making this up, but you get the point. So maybe the process is like this. There is a substrate preparation. Okay, there is a growing solution preparation. All right, so there's a couple of sub processes, and what you've got here are inputs. So let's say you've got, I don't know what the inputs might be, but let's say you've got time, you've got temperature, you've got start temperature, you've got substrate thickness, and when you've finished, what are you trying to understand? Well, maybe you're trying to understand density of the substrate. What else might you be able to understand? You might be permeability of the substrate. Okay, so there's a little subsystem that you've got going on before you do the main process. Then we've got the solution prep. So we might have, I don't know, again I'm making it up, the percent saline, the base pH, maybe the time that the growing solution sits around. So I've got two subsystems, and maybe what's coming out here, maybe the final pH. I'm making something up now, stability. All right. So you could be measuring the stability over time of this growing solution. Okay, so there are two subsystems. Then what they do, of course, is they feed the main system, which is the I'm going to call it cell growth process. So they come in here. And then of course this thing has got some variables coming in. I'm going to stick them in the top here because of the way I've drawn the diagram. I can't get them in anywhere else. But you might have things again like time, temperature, incubation speed, I don't know, cooling time, maybe the size of the initial cells that you choose, or maybe the type of the cells that you choose. There's all kinds of variables. And then out here, well, you're going to have some variables that you're trying to understand, probably for your project. I must admit, this is biology, and I'm running out of the ability now to think about what might come out this end. But you're gonna have requirements that your PhD is trying to understand. Now, I want you to do DOEs, but job one, I want you to construct an IPO diagram, an input-output diagram. Now, once we've got this, what can we do? Well, what we can do is to start to identify areas where we need to do experiments. So, for instance, you might look at this diagram and decide that that's known. It's a piece of technology that everybody knows and understands. There's a standard way to produce the substrate, etc. It's got a standard operating procedure, and we don't need the DOE. We just need to lock into it and use the knowledge that's already there. But then you might look at this and go, yeah, but this one, nobody knows how that works. That's why I'm doing the PhD maybe. this is, you know, this is where the knowledge, and by the way, these could be much bigger. I've just invented something with a few variables to show you how an IPO diagram, a multi-level IPO diagram works. So here, maybe the DOE one needed to be done. Here, nobody knows how this works. Wouldn't be doing my PhD otherwise. DOE 2. By the way, you could also, if you wanted to, have put a big square around the whole thing. So I'm going to do a DOE on the whole system, or multiple DOEs on the whole system. There's a number of ways that you can plan your project, but start with the IPO. Start with the inputs and the outputs. By the way, some of the inputs that might catch you out. So additional inputs that should be in there. Let's use the red pen. Additional inputs that should be in there. Things like maintenance procedures. Maintenance procedures. You know, normally in a laboratory, we don't have to worry too much about maintenance because you're not doing manufacturing. When you're using a piece of equipment every day, maybe there's a calibration. Maybe there's a calibration routine here for the measurement. So maybe there's some kind of fancy calibration that you have to do here. That's going to be important as well. So yes, there are dials, there are settings. Yeah, there's physics that you can understand, there's chemistry that you can understand, and we want that to be there. But in order for your experiments to be successful, you've got to set the plant up identically. You've got to maintain the plant, you've got to calibrate your measurement systems. All of that fine stuff needs to go on as well. So into this diagram, you can add the day-to-day maintenance things, filters that are getting blocked, filters that need to be cleaned, airlines not airlines, but feed lines into the system. I've worked with chemistry in the past, and one of the things that they don't like is air to get in the lines, for instance. So maybe, you know, if the equipment sat around for a week or two, maybe that's job one. You've got to clean all the air out of all the lines. All of that information should be on this diagram. And then you start to understand your laboratory standard operating procedures, and you start to understand what knowledge you know, and you start to understand what knowledge is missing, and you can start to plan your experiments to get that knowledge and get it into your PhD paper. Okay, so, you know, design of experiments, I can't recommend this highly enough. If you are doing research and you don't have this tool under your belt, you are literally working not with one arm tied behind your back, but with both arms tied behind your back, wearing a blindfold, because you are missing the most powerful research tool in the world. Go and learn design of experiments, go and generate an IPO diagram, multi-level, and then do the most fantastic PhD research project.